Good to have your company on Footy Classified. Tonight, exclusive details on Harley Reid's contract. Our panel, Gun, AFL.com.au reporter Cal Twomey.
Hey, Damo.
We've got a Brownlow medalist, we've got a Norm Smith medalist in Jimmy Bartell.
Evening, Damo.
And we've got a three-time Collingwood medalist and a five-time All-Australian in Matthew Lloyd. Cal, tonight we will start with you, and it is to do with Harley Reid's exclusive development.
Yeah, and it's hitting crunch time in the contract decision of Harley Reid at the West Coast Eagles. So he has the contract, of course, until the end of next season. He's had contract offers in front of him since April that have come from the Eagles. But in recent weeks, his management have sent counter offers to the Eagles. And a part of that we can detail tonight include a mammoth offer that would be a 2-year extension plus an extension on top of that of another 9 years. So an 11-year arrangement. Now, this is groundbreaking, really, in terms of what it would mean for West Coast Eagles and Harley Reid as one of the options. We've seen this in recent times with the contract of Miles Bergman, who signed a 2-year deal and then has an understanding with Port Adelaide that he can sign an extra 7 years beyond that. So it's not unprecedented, but it would be the biggest deal in AFL history by some way, and it would take him through to the end of 2037, which is remarkable to think about if he was to pursue that all the way through. But as we say, short term to begin with, and then the option of a longer term on top of that.
And if there is money attached to those 11 years in totality, we're talking upwards of $25 million by the time this plays out with CPI and raises in wage.
And that covers probably 3 different CBAs as well, so you have to build that into the deal. But yeah, this is enormous in terms of the 20 million plus that would be on the table. The update as well is that it hasn't really moved from recent weeks. So the Eagles are still weighing this up and going through their own negotiation process. And clubs, Lloydie, are continuing to hunt him in Victoria. I think Hawthorn are near on obsessed with Harley Reid and getting him to the club. They want him badly, are willing to go to 8 to 10 years at $1.7, $1.8 million to get him across the line.
Cal, if he was to want to leave after 2 years, does the next club who takes him have to pay that 9 year, or could he start afresh if he decides he wants to leave?
No, that'd start afresh. So that wouldn't carry over. Yes. It would be up to the own club to negotiate that deal. So that's not one that is anything other than really an agreement between club and management and player if it was to go that way. It can't be actually written into a deal, but it can be understood to be on the table all the way through.
And is a stumbling block that West Coast feel this is just getting too big on them and the money's too big?
Well, it's an extraordinary amount of money, isn't it? And it's money that other clubs are willing to throw up. We know that there's got chasing clubs in the pack in Victoria. A lot of clubs are all over him if he was to come back. I think the openness, though, is that the door's ajar for him to sign at West Coast. That now is there and for all to see. It's just about what that looks like.
In round 19, Collingwood had a loss to Fremantle narrowly on the back of a narrow loss to Gold Coast. Jimmy, with the injuries they've got down back, are you genuinely worried now, or is it a lapse as they go from 10 premiership points clear on the ladder, atop, to just 2?
I don't think I'm worried, and I don't think it's a lapse either. I think they played 2 very good sides. Gold Coast at Gold Coast is a very difficult matchup as it is, and it was a cracking game. Look, they kicked poorly, and then they chased them down and got themselves in front before Gold Coast overran them. And Freo, I think they played some pretty damn good football, but just didn't convert again. So they dominated inside forward 50 tackles. They had field position, and Freo, I think the credit's got to go to Freo. But you mentioned Howe and Frampton, the injuries down back, and what it's doing for Darcy more is the opposition is actually looking for that match-up there, because we know Darcy likes to zone off. He likes to play the leg rope, as you will, like 4 or 5 metres off his direct opponent. So if the opposition gets a bit of time and space, they're looking for that match-up because they know they'll have either one coming at them or a little bit of time. So even on this one, he's got a 3 or 4 metre head start. Voss is pretty explosive off the mark. So look at that, that's 4 or 5 metres. You're never making up that distance. So a bit of starting positions, bit of pressure up the field. That's difficult to stop no matter what when you've got time in front. But back to your first point, I have no concerns over Collingwood. I still think they're top 2, even though Adelaide are coming hard pretty, Lloydie.
Yeah, I think internally at Collingwood, they're not concerned by the defence because they're ranked number 1 across 19 weeks for points against. It's the offence. So they're still 4th. So it's
and you've got your concerns there too, don't you?
I have. I look at that goal kickers and the reliance on the guys at that age. So Jamie Elliott and Brodie Myercheck, they rely too much on them. I think McStay's been really disappointing. So he just doesn't win much ball. And this was the issue on the weekend. So that's 63 entries plus 23, but could only generate 78 points. The week before, Cal could only generate 63 points. So they don't have a star key forward. They rely a lot on Jamie Elliott.
Yeah, they do, and he'll be an All-Australian this year for the first time, but clearly so much reliance on him. There was some interesting remarks from Craig McRae post-game as well, guys. It did raise a few eyebrows about what he said about the Fremantle Football Club and their game style.
Yeah, that's right, Cal.
They needed to get the job done. They play good brand of footy when they're up and going fast, isn't it? Like, maybe they should play a bit more of that at times. It's a good version of them.
They've won 8 of their last 9 games, the Dockers. Is that a fair remark from Fly?
I think when the game was in the balance, Banfield's kick up the middle to Hayden Young and then finds Luke Jackson. I think that's what excites us about Freo is the potential. And now they've just got to find the balance. And I think they've done that in recent weeks is when they all get back and defend hard, which they did so well in the first few quarters. But when they open up the game, they can be as dangerous as anyone with their firepower.
They nearly stole it, Collingwood, and they've had such a great track record of doing so with the way they manage those final moments. But ultimately, the past 2 weeks, Lordo, they haven't been able to get over the line when recently they have. Interestingly enough, you've noticed what happened late, where Collingwood players were attempting to tackle but not force the umpire to make a decision. And tonight on Players program, which will also air after the conclusion of Footy Classified tonight, Isaac Quainer has given this a title.
Yeah, so that's like a little bit of our late game stuff. We call it a cowboy tackle. It's just about keeping the ball live because obviously the other team wants a stoppage. So we want to keep the ball in live play. So that's why you can see the boys. It doesn't look right, does it?
No.
But yeah, that was really well executed and obviously didn't quite go away in the end, but that's what we wanted.
It'll take a good side to beat them across 4 quarters and where they'll be disappointed is they're up by 22 points. They don't normally lose games in that scenario. So they had the lead, looked like they were home. But
do you like that tactic?
I love it because they're thinking through every scenario of how to hold on to a lead, how to get one back, and they just don't want another stoppage. So they're just pretty much saying, you've got to do something with it, which is they're thinking of absolutely everything. I think he's led the way, Craig McRae and his team, over the last 3 years.
It's been a frustrating 2 seasons for the Melbourne Footy Club, Jimmy, and they've now lost 6 of 7 and lost 12 for the year. And their leaders, both their coach and their captain, seem frustrated now.
Yeah, I was really fascinated by Simon Goodwin after the game in the post-match presser. And let's take a listen to Simon Goodwin.
Yeah, frustrating but disappointed and angry at the same time. I thought our start was way off. If you take the result away from it, you're looking to build unconditional behaviours and unconditional in the way that you play. And we're trying to build something. And when you start like that, it's probably the second time in the last 4 weeks where we're a fair way off from a role execution and an intensity of the game. That's incredibly frustrating and angry because that was probably the part of the game that really cost us the game.
That was an incredibly different Simon Goodwin than we've heard in probably the last 18 months, Damo. It's all been eat, love, play football, but that was an annoyed and angry Simon Goodwin.
And a concession, wasn't it, that just things are not working and that bad habits have been formed.
And I like it because he's putting that back on the players. You can be excused once, but twice in 4 weeks. And it's such an interesting juncture, especially the playing list. So if you're a player currently at Melbourne, you should be well aware that they're going to be making some big decisions on yourself and teammates around you.
What can they do, though? Because they're in a position where a lot of their best players are contracted long-term. They've already traded out their future first-round pick, which I say was a good decision. They got in Xavier Lindsay for that selection. He'd be in the top 5 of this year's draft. So that one's a tick. But what can they actually play with?
I think they've got to be open to any offers. And, of course, you don't want to sell at 30 cents on the dollar either. So you've got to be open to discussions because if you look back to Hawthorn when they had O'Meara and Mitchell and everyone goes, oh, you're getting rid of them. Well, they said we were finishing 15th and 16th around the midfield with our stoppage sort of stuff with those players. Melbourne have got to have those discussions. We're finishing where we're finishing with this current group. So how can we fast track to get to the next stage? That might be holding ground for a year to send us forward.
The other one that looks worn down to me is Max Gawn. Like he's been putting out spot fires for years now. Like just with indiscipline, selfish players, selfish teammates, underperforming, and
on and off field.
On and off the field. It's tiring, and I think it's playing on him, as you saw after the game as well.
Yeah, it's the hardest of the year, I think. Disappointing start, although it was still close. We allowed 20 inside 50s, but it just wasn't the right way to play in the first half, and then we played it right in the second half. But, yeah, it's a hard one to swallow for us.
And as the club and we in the media and wider football industry dissect what is happening to Melbourne, their stats are looking okay on paper, but it's almost the way that Melbourne don't want to be playing and performing with those types of numbers in a loss to an equally low team, Carlton.
Yeah, that's right. So 8 of the top 9 disposal winners were Melbourne players, but you look across that board and I ask you, who worries you with the ball in hand? And a number of years ago I would have jumped said, Petrarca does. He doesn't scare me anymore, like if he's got the footy. So Pickett, Salem does his little dinky kicks around.
Yeah, it's all Cozzy, isn't it?
It is.
It's all Cozzy. Just on Christian Petrarca as well, he was very ill on the weekend, so has been bedridden with the flu over the past couple of days. We'll miss him another couple of days of training this week. Hopefully be right to play next week. Obviously, you cross the field, you're up to play, and he's up for those standards as one of the champions at club, but a little bit of an explanation into why he was a little bit flat over the weekend.
Cal, I fully expect the saga of Christian Petrarca exploring options, as happened about this time last year leading into the trade period, is about to unfold again.
Do you? Yeah.
Have you got the same view? You're in this space more than I am.
Yeah, I mean, the difficult thing is he's signed for 4 years. He's told everyone he's very settled at Melbourne.
He said that last year too.
A little bit different. Not internally, he didn't. I think this time around internally he's been very settled. This time last year he was telling everyone he wanted to move. It just took a little while to emerge that it was that way. He's a difficult one to pry out because his money as well, I don't know what you're getting for a 30-year-old Christian Petrarca.
The clubs balked at that last year, didn't they?
Correct.
Yeah. And speaking of movement, the famous Silvani name, Jack Silvani specifically, linked now to Collingwood, and it is a real offer to counter the 4 years that Carlton's put to him.
Yeah, 4 years on the table from the Blues, which I think is a pretty good offer for an unrestricted free agent at his age. But Collingwood's interest is real. You love the byplay here, Jimmy, but it's more than that, though, that they're targeting him as a player who can play at either end of the ground, primarily as a defender, given some of their ageing defenders in that group.
He's finally locked down the position. Surprise, surprise, Silvani playing in defence. But he looks strong. He looks sound behind the footy. He knows his game inside out. He would fit pretty much most clubs pretty well. There wouldn't be too many clubs that wouldn't need a Jack Silvani, of course, that extra defender, strong in a one-on-one contest, Lloydie.
What money would we be talking for Jack? So I think it's really smart by Collingwood, getting a guy who I think could be, I think he'd go past Frampton. You can see where at the age does he play on next year? So it's really smart by them. What do you think?
If average pay now is about $450,000, you'd expect a free agency deal to be in the 6 to 7s, I think, for him. Probably around that 6 to 700,000.
And Lotto, you're big on the possibility of Carlton making something of Tom de Koning leaving, and you know that they've had a crack at Papley many years ago, and more recently Josh Rochelle. You've got a certain view on what they should do there too?
I think their issues are so big in the small forward space. When some teams have 3 guns and they don't have any, they have to have been at it all year to pull someone through the door. And I just look at some names that I'd be starting at, and you might say, oh, he's got a year to go or 2 years to go, but I'm talking Josh Rochelle, like those type of players. I'm talking Darcy Jones. We're talking like Jack Higgins. These are the type of guys that I want. Brad Close, fantastic player. I'm not sure what sort of money he'd be on. Kai Lohman and Zach Bailey. Try and make them.
Because it's not working with what they've got, is it?
No, it's not. And they're all trying their guts out, these guys, but they're just not to the level of the high-end players.
Papley's such a miss in hindsight.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he was the one that would have really topped off what's been a really good forward line over recent years.
Yep. Plenty more to come on Footy Classified, including stray dogs. Where to for the Western Bulldogs after a narrow defeat in Brisbane, and made to wait, a contract standoff and a bad loss, testing patience at the Saints. That's all to come on Footy Classified. Welcome back to Footy Classified. The Western Bulldogs registered another loss against the top 8 team in round 19, and Lordo, it does now leave them most vulnerable amongst those 9 teams battling for the top 8 spots.
Yeah, there's no shying away from it now. You look at that 1 win, 8 losses. You've heard Ed Richards, Jason Johannesson, and even Luke Beveridge over the weekend speaking about their issues against the best sides and the way they defend the ground.
They came through the middle of the ground too often. You know, they pulled kicks in there that we need to be able to defend. And that'll be the one that stands out for us, that with our team defence we need to do it better. You know, it's just too hard to circumvent those scoring opportunities once they go in the middle. It just opens everything up. As a team and as a group defending together, we just have to be more cohesive.
Yeah, just getting caught out. A lot of numbers of the ball. You can never, discredit the Dogs for their effort around the initial contest, and their midfielders, getting drawn to it and trying to win it. And that's where we see Richards and Bont and Libber go to work. But probably just a bit of balance, and that's whether they structurally set up one sitting off the contest or they have greater balance around the outside, because we know how proactive they are from half-back with Bailey Dale, Williams, even Bramble running off the half-back line, and the big rock lobster who loves to get really proactive as well. But what's hurting them against the Lions, you think of Berry's goal, Ashcroft goal, and all these, it's getting actually outside the bubble on the forward side. And the Lions did it really well. And you go back 2 weeks against the Crows, we saw the end of the work where Thilthorpe's getting on the end of it, but an Adelaide Crows player was able to get forward side And then when you're playing against those top sides, if they've got space and have the ability to look at the forward 50, they can pick you apart. So it's just a bit of balance for the Dogs, whether they do that structurally or actually the players they've got in there, they can bring one around just on the defensive side.
When you get to round 19, though, don't we now know what you can and can't do? And it's just simply not working. And as a result, they don't have either the capacity to change on the run enough now or the cattle to counter their problems.
No, so I actually think they do. They've got enough experience, they've got enough high quality, they've got a good enough coach to show them.
Well, tell Luke Beveridge what he needs to do to rectify that record.
I think he's clearly a much better person to identify that than myself, because I'm a person just sitting at the footy watching them play. But I think it's really been highlighted in the last 2 weeks in particular is if the side can, almost force the ball back on the other side of the line, on the other side of the scrum, if you will. And if you just go back and have a look at when Berry kicked his goal from 50, there was 3 lines on the attacking side because they were able to meet them at the contest. And that's when Richards and Johannesson were saying, we weren't tough enough in the contest. If you're going to play that way, you cannot let the ball squeeze out on the defensive side.
Lloydie, they'll thump Essendon this week. They do even when Essendon is at full strength across the last 10 years. But can they be a threat this year?
The doggies, nah, they'd just be good enough to trying to make the finals now. So
don't have any faith.
No faith now. Very, very disappointing. I just wonder whether the man they lost, Josh Dunkley, you look at what Brayshaw does for Fremantle, what Dunkley does for the Brisbane. I don't think the doggies have someone that I'd want to run through the trenches.
To go to war with.
They've got some wonderful players, but they don't run defensively.
Look, you've been as a great full forward order. You've been studying the Sam Darcy evolution and how, and you half tipped this, that clubs would come at him hard and play him very differently. What did you notice in this game, and where did it affect adversely the Bulldogs?
Well, I thought they played him wrong. This is the doggies played him wrong. The coach did. So why do you have? It's like having Wayne Carey up on the wing, and I'd say, I was critical of Jeremy Cameron doing this earlier in the year. What's Jeremy Cameron doing on a wing?
Did Harris Andrews on this occasion force him up though? Or you reckon he's chosen to go up that far?
That's what he do. You don't get forced to go up that far. So I thought he played a good game and he was dangerous. But this is the only disposal that warranted me going, hey, he's finally dangerous. And this is the stats to back it up. So 38% of his disposals were in the forward half, and normally it's at 80, 75. Some will say, well, it's been sat on his head. They had to try something different. But I'd be thinking, what a dream if I'm Chris Fagan and saying he's getting all these balls up on the wing or he's trying to win the footy on the wing. That's what the opposition coach wants. So I hope against Essendon this week he plays 0 to 30 and he tries to kick 10 goals. Yep.
The luxury the Lions have got as they attempt to defend their premiership, Lordo, is one of many luxuries, is Lachie Neale's role within this now dynamic midfield with the 2 Ashcrofts coming part of it. You spoke to Lachie Neale post-match on 3AW and you were taken by this assessment of his own game.
Well, I think this season for me, I wouldn't say I've taken a backward step, but really allowing guys like Will and Hugh to flourish in the midfield and really trusting those guys more and, just sharing the load in the midfield a bit more. I think for me, my thing is my body. I think the last couple of years I haven't had an off-season and a pre-season, so I know it's a little way away and hopefully can contend for a premiership, but I'm really looking forward to being able to build my body back up over the off-season and pre-season and come back fitter and stronger and a better player next year. At times I've been good driving my legs and really taking the game on, but it's been a bit inconsistent this year, so that's something that I'll definitely get to work on in the off-season.
Everyone thinks that because you're an AFL player you're a pro, but there's so many that aren't. So there's 800 footballers and there are guys like him, maybe Zach Merritt, they're on a different level, Isaac Heaney types, and he's playing at the moment, but he didn't get a pre-season that he wanted, so he feels like his legs aren't where they need to be. So he feels he can help his team win a premiership still, but he's wanting so much more for himself, and that's what separates champions from the rest.
You wouldn't know that, though, unless he said it himself publicly, would you?
No.
The Saints, a loss to St Kilda. It was their 12th loss of the past 14 matches. And while some who are defensive of Ross Lyon and others around the club will argue that there's a narrative that this club is very different to the one that he took over from Brett Ratten at the end of 2022. But let's just remind everyone what the president of the club did say in that period of time as they transitioned out of the Brett Ratten era into Ross Lyon.
The reality is we think our list is capable of more than we've shown. Simon talked about some of the inconsistency. At our best, we're a pretty good team. There are a bunch of other things we need to get better in our program for us to be successful. This isn't all about our coaching program and all about Brett. And if we don't fix those things, the new coach will also struggle to be successful. So we're really mindful of that, and we're going to fix all areas of the organisation. But we really felt that to maximise the chance of success, we needed a different style of leadership.
Yeah, of course. As you mentioned, Andrew Bassett, the chairperson of the St Kilda Football Club. And I think when they moved on Brett Ratton, they thought they'll bring in Ross Lyon. They had the talent there on their list. And I'm enjoying the opposing views from people who believe he's done a great job or he's battling a bit. But in the space of 12 months, they quickly identified they didn't have the list. And what I've been really bullish on is the young crop of Saints that they've got, and they've got to actually keep them together. So we often have the discussion about TDK and all these other players they're trying to attract, but they've got to keep this group that they've got. And Wanganeen-Milera is obviously the absolute top of the pile of that, but they've got Taru, Travalia, to name them, of course, Darcy Wilson, Philippo, Owens, Winhager. They've got to keep them all together, but I just found it really interesting when they brought Ross in. I think they thought they were a bit closer. But in the space of 12 months, I think Ross has ruled over the entire list and gone, oh no, I'm taking a blowtorch to that list.
They've changed the narrative on the run, which is their right to do. There's no doubt about that. But speaking of narratives, Kel, the Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera one doesn't have an outcome at the moment, and it has changed dramatically even in the past month.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was confidence that he'd sign a 2-year deal at the Saints. They've come hard with a strong offer to keep him at that footy club. But the reality is they don't know. Adelaide doesn't know what he's going to do. Port Adelaide doesn't know what he's going to do. He's the best poker player in footy. He's giving nothing away to anybody, and he still could make a decision next week, next month, or could be at the end of the year. So Port Adelaide and Adelaide have front-ended their offers to him, so that's getting close to $2 million a year over those opening couple of seasons.
As of next year?
As of next year. So it wouldn't be across the life of the deals, but it would mean in the opening 1, 2 or 3 years, that money would be close to $2 million.
So he would be the first $2 million footballer if he accepted one of those deals?
Yeah, but it would. I averaged out, it wouldn't be at that much.
How would they be able to facilitate the deal, using Port Adelaide, for example? Because Miles Bergman stayed. They don't exactly have the draft capital of someone who Wanganeen-Milera would take a lot of draft capital to get.
Well, he's out of contract for a start. Yeah. But the other part is I'm sure St Kilda would automatically ask for Zach Butters, who's got a year to run on his contract. Port Adelaide has been adamant all year that he's not going to be going anywhere. He's the chip with draft pick value. I still don't think he moves, but they've been creative in the past. I think step one is actually getting his commitment, then you work your way out of it after that.
Crows would be premiership favourites if they can land him, but what worries me for St Kilda is the language Ross used with Josh Battle, and he's used the same language again last week with Nasiah.
We just build it and hopefully they come, So, yeah, we've got a strong relationship. I haven't even asked him. Have I had dinner with him? Do we do that? Do all those things? We do it all the same. We treat everyone equally, build a really good environment, and then hopefully it falls our way. Yeah, I've got no idea. Build it and they'll come. Develop our players, support them, make it a safe environment, and then at the end of the day, they're good enough to keep them. We're not. Not losing too much sleep over it.
Word for word, a year apart. The most recent game from Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera, if he wasn't best on ground, he was amongst the very best players who would have got the votes. And it's a midfield role that he's been playing in the past fortnight that has changed somewhat to what he had been used previously, Kel.
They've offered all these big deals to midfielders. They've got one, don't they?
They've got a star, and they're chasing stars, and probably they need to get a few others to pop over the next 12 to 18 months, of course. But I think him moving inside, how quickly he's been able to adapt to that, not just being off half-back and in the wing, but the man who kicked it there too is another helpful player as well.
Cal, what's behind his decision, you think? I know money's important, but he'll get paid well anywhere.
Yeah, the difference isn't that much in terms of money across. I think it's honestly whether he wants to stay in Victoria where he doesn't have family versus going home to South Australia where he's really tight with his family and also friends.
From a team perspective, Port aren't that much more enticing, are they? Would you say then?
I wouldn't have thought so right now.
No.
Yeah, particularly with the unknown around Zach Butters. Jimmy, you mentioned Darcy Wilson as part of those young guns at the Saints, and obviously he was their first round pick in 2023, played a full quota of matches last year in 2024, but has twice been dropped this year, and there is a level of disharmony in certain aspects of his arrangements at St Kilda. He's contracted, Cal, as you well know, for 2026. He's that first batch of draftees who were required to sign 3-year deals, but there's no movement beyond that particular period. And just to back over the disharmony component to that conversation, the narrative that Ross Lyon made public about Darcy coming to him wanting to play VFL, that was fair to say was mixed received by Darcy Wilson and others around Darcy Wilson, because he didn't necessarily asked word for word to play in the VFL. There's a frustration attached there. And again, it happens to a second-year player, and Ross is entitled to make whatever decision he feels needs to make at selection. But he is frustrated, Darcy Wilson.
Yeah, and he's one of about half of that first round of 2023 that haven't signed on beyond the end of next year. Of course, number one being Harley Reid, but I don't think he'll be any rush to re-sign over the next couple of months. I think it's one that will drag into next year.
Yep. Time for a break, and still ahead on Footy Classified. The water cooler. Does West Coast deserve a bailout from AFL headquarters? I think Twomey is going to argue yes. And Dimmer's reality check after the Crows demolition. West Coast coach Andrew McQualter there, reflective and shattered after the 17th loss of his first season as West Coast Eagles coach. They are a mess. They've had 8 wins and 79 losses across the past 4 seasons. And while I concede Twomey that's a drastically dismal record, I loathe the possibility of the club being given AFL handouts by way of draft assistance to help fix their cause. But I believe you've got a different view.
Well, I mean, the numbers. I just look at the numbers and say it could well be 11 wins from 91 games by the end of this season. And looking at the other priority picks and list concessions packages that have come through over recent years. In 2022, just bear with me, North Melbourne had won 12 of their last 84 games when they were given a stack of picks. Gold Coast in 2019 won 7 games from the previous 2 seasons, and then obviously got the pick 1 out of that, which turned into be Matt Rowell. So they are, West Coast, strongly considering their priority pick pitch, and I think while the option is there for clubs to put their hand out, they have to put their hand out, don't they, and ask for it. Now, whether the AFL give it this year or they start the running for next year if they're poor again next year, I think the really important thing worth noting here is while some of these other clubs have rebuilt over different periods, West Coast is rebuilding in the most compromised draft era of all time. So Harley Reid pick 1, their start of second round pick was pick 30 a couple of years ago. They're not getting the same bite at the draft as recent clubs that have rebuilt.
As I argued against all those other previously given assistance packages, I argue against the West Coast Eagles, Kel, because it is self-inflicted largely in my eyes. And I say that because Adam Simpson, the old coach, effectively conceded that last week.
We thought, OK, we'll get our senior players back. We'll draft, we've got a couple of good draft picks here. Let's get the band back together and we're going to have a tilt next year. That was the wrong decision in the end, wasn't it? I mean, history tells you that we couldn't get the band back together. When they got back, they weren't the same players. So there's definitely swings and roundabouts, and the decisions you make as a club right now, if you're in the bottom half of the 8, they could define your next decade.
So, Cal, I ask you, though, what to give them that, apart from the Damo saying self-inflicted, and you said they're trying to rebuild in a compromised draft, what else has gone against them apart from poor management or players that were unfit, players that weren't...
And given contracts they shouldn't have got.
Injuries as part of footy, Cal.
Yeah, it is. But they've been without Jake Warnham and Elliot Yeo, Jeremy McGovern this year.
But Carl, Essendon are decimated, so do we give them...
They're probably within their rights too, but by the assessment of the other benchmarks that the AFL's done with this. Andrew Dillon today was asked about whether they deserved a priority pick or a list concession, and he threw up Adelaide and Brisbane's list model being a part of this. Greg Swan was at the press conference today. Brisbane got a priority pick at the start of his tenure. So it has been done before, and just little bits can help. I'm not saying they deserve it, but I'm saying...
It hasn't helped North Melbourne.
Well, it hasn't helped North Melbourne, no, but they got the wrong players in.
Kel, you mentioned compromised draft, and everywhere we hear, but it's the weakest draft we've ever heard. There's talent in every draft. You're the best to go to on this. Is this the weakest draft we've seen in some time? Is there plenty of great talent out there in the open pool?
There is, but I would say that it lacks the star quality of any of the recent drafts. So I think the number 1 pick is wide open, and I think it could be a bid as well for Zeke Hewland or Dylan Patterson, the Gold Coast Academy players. I'm doing my first rankings this week, so watch out on afl.com.au on Wednesday for those. But 8 of the first 25 are going to be tied to clubs. So it is very, very compromised, and that pushes through and seeps through the pool. So if you're looking for a star at the top end, I don't think they're going to be as obvious as they were in previous years.
The Crows are flying and could be top 2 by the end of this home and away season if they can beat Collingwood later in the season. And they just keep putting pressure on in every single way. They've recruited well. You look at that, points for third, points against second. So that is a premiership winning model with what they're doing. And their ball movement, the hardest kick in football is going inside forward 50. What a recruitment. Neil Bullen has been sensational. You think of Dawson coming to the club, Isaac Rankin coming to the club.
That guy came to the club, Keys, many years ago.
Yeah, Dan Curtin, early choice, getting that right. Fogarty, early choice, getting that right. And then you bring in Ben Keys, brilliant player. Peatling's played a fantastic role. Cummings been sensational. Rankin. Yeah, and then you got Michael Annie, even Worrell late in the piece. So they've just done a fantastic job, and they've stuck by their coach, Matthew Nix, when many would have thought maybe it's time for him to go. And they are going to be in the window now for the next 5 years, you'd suggest. You mentioned the coach there, Lloydie, Matthew Nix. He's got him humming, and you look at the previous seasons, and he was under the pump. And, quite rightly, when you've had that much time leading a side and haven't played finals. But it makes you think, as he's entered his 6th season here, he actually falls now right into the hitting zone of recent premiership coaches. So we go back in recent times, Adam Simpson, who we spoke about before, 5 years, Simon Goodwin, 5 years, and then Bomber Thompson when he won there in 07 when I was a player there. That was his 8th season. Dimmer Hardwick after he cleaned out around him 8 years, and of course Chris Fagan 8 years as well. So sometimes if you're just a little bit patient and you're incredibly brave as a football department or a board, some good things can happen. And they're active in the trade market and free agency market again this year. We spoke about Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera maybe being that final piece. Well, there's also the ruck merry-go-round that hinges a lot on what Sam Draper does. Adelaide, we know, have interest in him. Brisbane, I understand he has a 5-year offer for him as well as a free agent. Also can say tonight that the Bombers have a 4-year deal, but does have a trigger for a 5th season. So if he gets out there on the park more than he has over the past couple of years, my understanding is it does have a trigger for a 5th year to match that longer-term offer at the Brisbane Lions. And Riley O'Brien, so the Crows ruckman, who's been really, really good this year, he's been waiting to see what happens with Sam Draper as well. But Adelaide has actually upped its offer from 2 years to 3 years now to keep him at their football club. So that's a sign that they're clearly keen to keep their veteran ruck with their own footy club. Right now, it's hard to know what the loss for Gold Coast actually means, whether it was real and a problem for them from a finals perspective or just a blip on the radar. And Damien Hardwick, very bluntly, as often is the case, assessed it post-match.
Every good side I've been a part of gets a kick in the nuts at some stage. Today was our kick in the nuts. Like I said, there's some things in our game that, the scoreboard, we didn't kick very well, we didn't take our chances, and they did. Sort of thing. So, as I said, you've got to take your chances when you play over it. And, we had some outstanding looks going across the arcs and we just stuffed them up. They had a shocker, but I'm still right on board with this side. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but even if they were to fall short and miss, I still think they are on a massive path to go deep in the next couple of years. So that'd be an opportunity loss. Yeah, it would be, but they are 11 wins and 6 losses, and I think it's the way they play the game is still so strong that I can't see them being gone down for 2. So, say, for example, they'll play finals, you'd think. They should sneak in. Not sure if they'll win one, but next year wouldn't surprise me if they, are playing in a prelim. Would you be worried at all in the final about the young key forwards? Young key forwards generally have struggled in September. Yeah, that's why. I just think that on the road, early in the game, they're belted. If you're any good, you're not down by 50 points early in a game. Yeah, and you mentioned young key forwards, and they've got them, but I'm actually probably more worried down back, of course, and this is probably how highly I rate Charlie Ballard, who hasn't played this season, of course, going down with that knee injury. But what it does, and we spoke about, experienced players with the knock-on effect with teammates going down around you, and it means everyone either has to slide up a roll or slide down a roll, and it just means Mac Andrew has to play as a key back already, and I don't think they envisage him this early in his career playing as a key back on big opposition key forwards, like the Thilthorpes of the world. So you ideally want Andrew at this stage of his career with his athleticism, being the third man up, being that free-running defender. So I think they're actually feeling a bit of the pinch with Charlie Ballard being out of the side. Yep. And another massive game coming up in round 20 on Saturday against their crosstown rival in Brisbane. Now, look out after the break because Lordo is back with the sledgehammer. It's Jimmy's favourite segment, plus good call, bad call, the closing cook and plenty more. There are some players you don't zone defence on. One of them is Isaac Heaney, the other is Cozzy Pickett. So this is where they got it wrong on the weekend. This young Hardiman, so he's looking to hand over here to Dawson. You don't do that. You just stay. I'm arm in the back. I'm chesting him. I'm not giving Heaney no time, no space. He's scrambling because he's playing up high in front of him, ends up slipping over. Goal to Isaac Heaney. I'd give those guys no space. This is Saad, again, in the perfect position up against Cozzy Pickett.
he just gets caught ball watching. These players give him no time, no space whatsoever. Tom Green, he's invented his own kick. What about these bananas? So he's bananaing lace-out passes to his teammates. So there was one, and this one's just as good. Over 30 or 40 metres, lace out the players. I've not seen anything like it. Kai Lohmann, I was critical of this last year. Brisbane Lions at times being selfish. He's got to give that back. You've got to trust each other, give them, get them back. He doesn't give it. They all blow up at him. He kicks a goal a minute or two later and he walks up and says, geez, I'm sorry, Will. I'm sorry, but it's too late. You don't want to lose yourself a game in that situation. I love wing battles at the moment. So this was Jager O'Meara v Ed Allen. So O'Meara gets caught up in the contest. Ed Allen kicks the biggest goal of his career. They go 22 points up. He's thinking, how good is football? Then a minute later, he fumbles. This is a ground ball. You must take it AFL level. He fumbles through his legs. The bloke who kicked the goal on before, O'Meara, he punishes him. He kicks a goal back in the game. They end up losing. Could he have been cleaner? They win that game of footy. Port, I say the fundamentals get bigger. You know, the discrepancy in wet weather football. A Lear fumble, slips over. Hawthorn were cleaner for longer. Then you got Sin. One hand, slips over. Hawthorn were cleaner late when it mattered most. You've got to study the great players. So this is Liam Stocker on Jeremy Cameron. Where does he want to turn? Don't watch the ball, watch your hips. He's watching the ball, gets transfixed. Don't give him his left side, Liam, because that's what he's going to do. He's going to absolutely punish you. And this one's even worse. Mark Blixarf's taken marks. Look at all the Saints players. These two are having a chat. He's got his hands on his hips. Caminiti's there. 60, they're not even watching. Jeremy Cameron runs around and snaps. They've got to be better than that. Be alert. Blixarf doesn't want to take the shot, and Jeremy's there sweating on it. So the Saints have got to get better, Damo.
Jimmy, it's still the best segment. He identifies patches of play that no one else bothers to look at.
Like that banana kick from Tom Green.
Unbelievable, Cal.
And the Saints players having a little chat.